Welcome to Belmont Banter, the official podcast of Whitstable Town FC. Every week we chat to ex-players, supporters and invited guests here on Belmont Banter.
Welcome to the official podcast of Whitstable Town FC.
Whitstable Town Football Club's main sponsor is Fibertech UK Limited.
Hello again everyone and welcome to Belmont Banter, and this week we've got someone that I really admire as a football player. I've seen him run around the green grass of Belmont, but I don't know a lot about his history before or after the Belmont, so we'll be finding that out. And it's Jimmy Strouts. Hi Jimmy, how you doing?
Hello Tony, and thank you very much for inviting me on. Very much appreciated.
Well, I could say that it's peer pressure because so many people have said to me, get Jimmy Strouts on, get Jimmy Strouts on. Why isn't Jimmy on? So this is a request that's been granted by everybody. So where did it all start for you, Jim?
Where did it start for me? Oh, I'm a North Kent boy, and my first kind of real football time was in the Cubs when I was probably 7 or 8, maybe something like that, and a little bit with the village school I went to, which was in Selling, and the Cubs were in Sandwich. I can't really remember much from those days apart from being ferried around, obviously, by my mum and dad and my two brothers coming along as well. But that's where it kind of really started. Yeah, from there it just started to progress, I suppose. Didn't really have a boyhood team until we moved from Selling to Sittingbourne. But just before we moved, there was a couple of times when the team that I ended up playing for came over to Selling to play a couple of friendlies with some local teams, I suppose, in the area. But I suppose that was when I was around maybe 10, 11 years old.
You mentioned two brothers. Were they interested in football?
They like football, but they are not as interested as I was back then, and still are, really. One was left-footed, and one really didn't take it up as I did. So it was me, just really out of the three of us.
It's always good if one sort of like feels it's his thing and he just does it. That's really good.
Yeah, I mean they had far more things on their mind than playing football. I suppose they were more focused on their education. Let's put it that way.
Yours came later.
Yeah. We'll get to that.
You had your football education, and then stuff follows. You were still in Selling, and you still weren't really playing for a team properly, apart from the Cubs. Then. Yeah,
no, it was like I say, literally Cubs and the village school. It wasn't Selling, it was Selling, just outside Faversham. But yeah, so we lived there for must have been about 4 or 5 years, and then we moved to Sittingbourne, and then that's where the football side of it really started to kick off, really. Excuse the pun.
Yeah. Where was their ground situated then?
I played for a team called Swale Magpies, which then moved into Sittingbourne Youth, Sittingbourne United, and at the time we had a ground over at Kemsley and a pitch over that way, which is now I think a housing estate, and then obviously the Sittingbourne ground that we played at, the ball ground, is now, I think, is it Sainsbury's or Tesco's? I'm not too sure.
Yeah, because was that reasonably near the railway station?
It was central in town, really, up by Borden Grammar School.
I know, yeah.
And Sittingbourne, I think it was. I'm not too sure what the club was there, actually, across the road on Remembrance. Yeah, no, it was smack bang in the centre of town, really. It was perfect for everyone to come and watch a game, I suppose, Saturday afternoon or an evening game. But we didn't really play there until we were under 15s, under 16s maybe. So most of our games were played over at this field over in Kemsley, which we took on and we stripped back. It was all overgrown. They put in a couple of containers to house the goals, and we built the team from there, really. We had a fairly decent side, to be fair. Remember a guy called Donald Atwoods, Paul DeBoos, Grant Manser, a few other names. I can't remember all of them, to be fair. Apologies to everyone that did play on that side, but it was a good side, very good side.
So that was officially Sittingbourne's under 15s then.
Yeah, it would have been back then. That would have been 1985, 86, maybe something like that. Yes, it was a good side. I mean, now that I look back on everything about football, really, it wasn't what you would expect nowadays. It was all about. I'm very much more focused on from playing to where I was back then to where I am now is kind of chalk and cheese. It was all about winning and getting as many goals as we possibly can. And there's no disrespect to the guy that that run it and everything, and put in all the time and effort that he did to give us the games and to be able to play. But it was very much focused about the winning rather than the technical ability and learning and developing that it is nowadays.
Yeah, I'm very much my sort of era and before was this now with the academies. They, I mean, it's incredible, isn't it? The facilities, the way they're coached now, quite amazing.
Yeah, some of the kind of facilities that people have got and the coaches that are available, like you say, it is amazing and very much outstanding, really, with some of the kind of techniques and the coaching kind of aspects that they bring each individual is spot on. I'm forever watching and learning from people, and I just love being out there coaching now.
We've sort of digressed slightly, but
yeah, sorry, yeah.
No, it's all right. You're hinting that you that's your life now. You're still involved in football.
Yeah, I still do a little bit for Canterbury Youth, and taking some boys that I've been coaching since they were probably 5-6 years old, and they're still with us now. So yeah, that's been another part of the journey, really. And that's not just been me, that's been the support of Mr. Keir that you've probably had on already, yeah. Andy Keir, and a guy called Matt Pitchikaran that's really helped in the background and organising everything, and allowed me to kind of focus on the coaching aspects of developing the kids and making sure that they're having a good time while getting a bit of fresh air and kicking a ball around some grass somewhere.
You've mentioned a name there, Andy Keir. Now, Andy to me has always been the quiet man at the back of the room. He's never been the guy. No, seriously, that's the impression we've got around the club of him. He's never been one to push himself forward. He's sort of like Mr. Reliable.
Yeah,
he turns up on time. He does the job, and boy, goodness me, what a career he's had as well.
Yeah, no, he's done well. Like you say, and I do agree. I think he probably could have done a little bit more, to be fair. But
yeah,
it is difficult. Football is very fickle. It's right place, right time, and how much you enjoy that, where you are and what you're doing, and whether or not you do want to give another step to it. And it's a big ask, whatever level you decide to play at and the level you want to push yourself to. Those are the kind of things that never really get spoken about, I suppose. And you only find out as you gradually climb up the ladder of how difficult it is off the field. Really, on the field, it probably just come natural to all players. And I think if you ask any player whether they're playing in the World Cup or for a Sunday team in any part of the season, once you step over the kind of the white line and you're focused in what you want to do and what you're doing as an individual and for the team, it kind of everything else becomes irrelevant, really. Yeah. It's obviously there. Two people watching on the Sunday afternoon, or 100,000 in a stadium in Brazil, maybe. For me, that's how I see it. I mean, I may be wrong, but everyone's got their opinion.
One of the things that always has amazed me, and I only had a very, very short spell of it, because by the time I was 18, I had water on the knee, and that was it. My football career was gone. But talking to a lot of the lads, when they've sort of opened up a bit more about, let's say, the emotional side of it, the camaraderie side of it, team side of it, and the dressing room side of it, there's so much within that sort of concept that either drives you on, you let that go, or you embrace it. Or what I'm trying to say is that there are lots of distractions other than what's on the pitch that inhibit a lot of people from progressing. They may not be a very strong person mentally within the confines of the dressing room, but on the pitch, they're a leader. It's really
yeah. I mean, it's interesting. You talk about having water on the knee. Another player that I kind of started when I was a kid was a guy called Steve Fletcher, and in fact, Mark Seeger was around at that time as well, playing for another team in that Sunday league. I forget what they were called now. They played out of Tenham, but they were the kind of the outstanding players within that kind of age group. And another guy, Chippy Carpenter, played around that time as well when we were all kids. There was some good players around, but to talk about injuries, for example, Steve Fletcher ended up having the best part of, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 injections into his knee so that he could keep on playing. He was at West Ham for a little bit as well. I think he stopped playing in the end around about 19, just because the pressure on his actual body was far too much. Too many injections, and it's very much a mental thing. But I think as well, the body does end up saying to you that this is it, especially at kind of the standards you want to start to get to, and whether or not you can make it. We all think we can still go out running around and kicking a ball around, but I'm afraid it does catch up with us all in the end, whether you're 16, 17, 18 or 49, 50. It's like it's a strange one, and I'm just grateful for everything that I was able to do in my football career, and what I'm able to do at the moment. So it's more about kind of, for me, giving back to the local community, and if I get opportunities to travel with it, then I take them as quickly as I can, and I've been lucky to be able to do that over the last the years that I've been involved in football.
Whitstable Town Football Club's main sponsor is Fibertech UK Limited.
Going back to early days again, I know you just touched on school football and the different guys you played with, sort of like a junior level. When did you get the first sort of inkling that you were going to be good enough, or you had enough desire to go that one step further?
I don't think it's about, personally, it's not about being good enough. I do think it is just all about desire. I was never ever would purport to be the most graceful of players. I had bags of wanting to do well, and I never played for the school team, first team. I was too small. So when I left school, I was, as I say, when I was back, living in Selling, and I'd either be wearing a football kit one day, kicking the ball around in the back garden, or I'd be throwing on some kind of army uniform of some sort and rolling around in the grass pretending to be a soldier. But I left school at 16 and joined the army, and it kind of just went from there, really. Sittingbourne was the kind of club that I was playing for at the time, and I'd come back and play for them every now and again during those first couple of years that I was in the army. But it really started just to kick off once I joined the army, really, to be fair. I mean, it was just a whirlwind of 10 years. At the time then, the military was, well, just the army, I think, was around about 120,000 strong, and they were able to allow soldiers to do soldiering and the business that they needed to do. And also at the same time, if sportsmen excelled, they were selected to represent the British Army and the British military in combined services, and travel the world, really promoting whatever sport that they were excelling in. And obviously, you got a lot of the core, the rugby was massive in the British Army, and they kind of, were able to field players within the England side, and athletics again was huge, and you'd get a lot of athletes coming out of the army or the military and representing Great Britain. So it was very big through I suppose the mid 80s into the early 90s, that if you were good at sport, then you had the best of both worlds. So yeah, from the early ages, yeah, so from when I was 16 all the way through. So the accolade of playing for the Army, one of the youngest to play for the Army senior side, represented the Army Youth for 2 years, and in the second season of the Army Youth, I also I was involved in the senior squad, and so that would have been around about 80, 89, all the way through till I left in 96.
Did you do tours abroad as well?
Yeah. So it wasn't as bad as it has been over the last. Well, I say it's been relatively quiet in comparison to things that went on from the late 90s through to the kind of mid noughties, kind of 2012 up to about 2015, I suppose. But that period, that 20-year period, kind of I was out and working in Civvy Street during that period. But from when I was in, I went over to Bosnia a couple of times and down to the Falklands for a tour. But that's kind of as much as I saw from a military point of view. 3 tours, Croatia with United Nations, Bosnia with NATO, and a tour down to the Falklands to man a radio station for 6 months. So my role I was in the Royal Signals basically, and so I represented the Royal Signals at football. I represented the Army Youth, Army Seniors, combined services. So they're obviously Army, Navy, Air Force, both in youth and seniors as well. So playing football was completely different. I was Belgium, Germany, Holland, France, Thailand, Hong Kong. Yeah, so I was very lucky.
You must have played against some good sides.
Yeah, I should have done more research before we popped on, but there were some names that represented obviously Belgium and Holland at that time, because they have national service. So the likes of Edgar Davids and Schifo were involved in their squads back then. You don't think about it at the time. You just play the games, and it's the oldest European Cup competition. You look it up, the Kentish Cup. The Kentish Cup is held between the British military, the Dutch, and the Belgians when I was playing, but the French are also involved as well, and those are the kind of the 4 nations that play in that cup competition. And then we went on to win that while I was playing, which was good. And I mean, it was a whirlwind. It really was. One day I will sit down and go through some programs and look through it properly and really appreciate kind of the times that we had. But that's where I probably learned how to play football, really. There's lots of people that I could name that have pushed me in the right direction, I suppose, in coaching and learning the game. Just privileged to be amongst those types of people, and see them to go on and do what they've done in their career has been, it's been Mike Taylor was the goalkeeper that I played alongside for a number of years, who went on to represent his country. Yeah. I think he's maybe at Walsall now. Lee Bradbury was another one who played for, I don't know, did he play 500 league games across the board with Portsmouth, Man City? And he was outstanding. I mean, it was just, for me, it was amazing. I was in awe of actually being involved in teams that I was involved in. Joe Roach who was at Bournemouth for a number of years and I think he's still there actually as the academy head coach. But he just made me the player that I was, I suppose, and all the other players that were around at that time, the senior players that I've kind of that no one would really know or hear of, but you always look back at those types of players and you think, that's where I learned how to play, really. I've got some really, I can't, they're just, great people for me, really. But I mean, that really just helped, where I got to from a civilian perspective in playing football. A guy called Alan Higgins and a guy called Terry Knight and another guy called Stan Gould. Stan Gould was a colonel. He was around when I was in the Army Youth. He was the manager at the time, and his input into my game and the way that I approached it, and not just for me, but for all the boys as well. There are things that you remember, and I, like I say, back then, 16, 17 years old, and I brought, I bring things that he did back then. I bring them into the game now to develop and get kids to, understand themselves. And I've been in adult changing rooms, and I've got I've got people. If you ask, some people to, it's like you said just a minute ago. How do you get a group of people to be together as a team, but individually perform? What are the things that you want to get out of them to be able to do that over a certain period of time? And you don't want to, in a changing room, you don't want to kind of get people going too early, because then you might miss the boat when you're out on the pitch. And it's all about kind of that motivational stuff as well that you need to bring into people. And one of the things that he taught us as young kids back then was our, finding our inner self as well. And he did that in spades, really. And there's other guys have that kind of hierarchy as well. It's the same as you do in all the civilian clubs. You've got a chairman and people like that kind of manage the club. And obviously the army had that as well. You had your affiliation to the FA, you had a chairman, and those chairmen change every 2 years. The chairman has to move out, and it's just a role that the officers generally take on alongside of their normal kind of day-to-day routine. And there was one officer that was the chairman at the time, and he was an unbelievable bloke. And his nickname, I won't talk about him personally, but his nickname was, he was given the nickname of Darth Vader. He was tall, and he had a gravelly voice, and he was at the time he was CO in charge of a unit, and also he was our chairman. And he came to one of the games that we were playing, the I think it was Army Navy, Army RAF, something like that, I'm not too sure now. And he went round each individual one of us in the changing rooms just before the kickoff and asked us whether or not we had what our inner roar was. Have you got an inner roar, Tony?
What do you mean, a roar?
Yeah, there is. Yeah. So you can imagine that
in a
changing room, every player going round. And I've done that. I've lost count how many times I've done that now. And I've, where I've been a captain, or I've been the manager, or I've been the coach. I'm sure I've probably done it when I was at Whitstable playing with the players that we were playing with there. I mean, Andy Keir, he's seen me do it numerous times. Me and him have obviously done quite a lot together over the years with the kids around the local area. There'll be kids in this, that potentially may listen to this and go, yeah, I remember when Jimmy asked me to do that. But things like that do stick with you, because those are the kind of things that, actually internally get you motivated. Have you got that in you? Have you got that? It's not a desire, I suppose, but it's more of a
passion.
Yeah, passion. But it also shows, that you're not afraid of showing yourself, and being brave to be able to do that, And some people don't, and we get that, and they have their ways of doing things, and you have to leave them to do that. And it is for me, the psychology and aspect of football nowadays is huge, is massive. That's how I enjoy those kind of ways of doing things, and it sounds to me as if you do as well, Tony, with your raw.
I do. Yeah, my wife and I, we. She's a counsellor. She runs a counselling service. She's been very, very successful at it. However, she had no intentions at all of being in business. She just wanted to be a counsellor. And circumstances turned her another way, and she has found her inner self, and she's been phenomenally successful.
Yeah.
It's quite incredible. Really amazing.
It is fascinating. I mean, it is one thing that I'd really do. I like to think. I mean, I'm not educated in that in any way at all. I mean, I've done my apprenticeship in telecommunications and engineering and data communications later on in my life. But from that aspect, the only kind of stuff that I've learned through that is, inner internal kind of, training courses you might go in your working life, and also the kind of courses that you get with doing your FA coaching badges. But I really do believe in it, and I think it is fundamental, really, for me. Again, I kind of alluded to it earlier, and it's always been about developing the children and the kids that are playing now, not just in football terms, but in life skills really. And hopefully, kind of, I've given that back to as many kids as I've been able to coach over the years, and hopefully they've kind of enjoyed my way of doing things. And I'm sure there'll be players out there. I'm sure there's loads of players out there talking, or end up listening to this and be saying, "Oh God, what is he coach them?" But, for the ones that really do know me, they will understand what I want to achieve from a coaching perspective now, even though I was completely different, I suppose, as a player.
Well, Jimmy, I think we're going to have to call a halt there, and we're going to do part 2. So if you don't mind, okay. We'll just pause for a moment, and I'll just say to everyone, well, it's going to be a bit of a roller coaster, this one. Jim started off talking about his youth. He's now regressed a bit and gone back through the army days and talked in depth about his psychology to do with coaching, which I find fascinating, and I'm sure you all will. From me here at Belmont Banter and Jim on the other end of a phone, we'll say goodbye, but hang around because part 2 is coming up.
Many thanks, Tony. Thank you.
Whitstable Town Football Club's main sponsor is Fibertech UK Limited. They are providers of optical fibre services to the telecoms industry, specialising in optical fibre provision, local and long haul. We offer a full turnkey solution to our clients throughout London and the south of England. Contact us through the website for more details.
Your host, Tony Rouse, every week on Belmont Banter, for news about local football in Kent and beyond.
I do hope that you've enjoyed today's episode of Belmont Banter. Don't forget there's a new episode out every week which comes out on a Sunday night, early Monday morning. And you can leave your suggestions for a guest to invite at the end. And leave a like, and don't forget to pass it on to all your mates. Cheers!